What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, and we're back with you too. I appreciate the patience. It took me a while to get Achtung Baby, which is further to say shout out to Mr. Solo, who shared the first few albums, and Adam, who has shared the last couple, including Rattle and Hum. But yeah, his server was offline for a while, so ultimately I was able to procure the album, but I know it was a longer wait than intended, so bear with me and apologies. In any case, I also wanted to give a shout out to Izzy, who is not only very fond of this album that we're now arriving at, Achtung Baby 1991, but who gave me some context, including way back when I did my first U2 reaction, which was the, I think, extended or dance mix of Lady with the Spinning Head. And what he mentioned is not only was that song utilized for parts, and parts of it would go into 3 different U2 songs, 2 of which are on this album Achtung Baby, which is Ultraviolet and The Fly, as well as, what is it, like Hold Me, Kiss Me, Thrill Me, Kill Me, I believe. But yes, he mentioned that not only was that track indicative of a direction they were about to go with Achtung Baby, and that parts of it were actually used in a couple tunes on the album, but he mentioned that, for a lot of people, Joshua Tree is one of their masterpieces, and, there's a couple other of their early albums that are held in very high regard by a lot of U2 fans, but he said for him, their true masterpiece was Achtung Baby, in part because it didn't necessarily follow from what they had done previously, or it defied expectations, it sort of went in a different direction. And he compared it to, and we're both Duran Duran fans, Izzy and I, he compared it to the way that Rio is maybe their most popular album, and rightly celebrated by fans, but that Medazzaland is kind of this off-the-beaten-path, darker and more unexpected album in their catalog, and he and I have talked before about how that's what I think about the Depeche Mode album Ultra, which is very different from a lot of what they had done earlier, including different from the first couple albums in the 90s, but I kind of like it because it's so off the beaten path, and it's dark, and it's even more industrial, and so on. So he was basically saying that Achtung Baby has a similar sort of legacy in the larger U2 catalog, in that it is outside a lot of what they had done before, and it kind of stands on its own relative to their larger discography. So I'm excited to begin the album finally, and the first tune is Zoo Station. So yeah, a zoo, of course, is a place where animals are kept. I guess it depends on your attitude about zoos, but it is a place where you're not allowed to leave, and you are kept in a certain confined area, whether that's literally like a pen or a cage, or like a broader area, like sanctuary. But station is, of course, one of the ways we describe liminal spaces, like spaces where you're like passing through, and like a train station, a subway station, an airport. But also a station is a channel for like media broadcasting. But I wonder here if this is a proper name reference, meaning I'm not familiar with any station that is Zoo Station, or at least I can't recall being familiar with a proper name Zoo Station, but I'm inclined to think maybe there is a specific reference being made here that I'm not familiar with. But yes, if it is like more common nouns, Zoo Station, I don't quite know which meaning to take the second word, and ultimately I don't quite know how they would combine together, other than to maybe think of like, by extension, we humans are in this zoo that we call a city, or a country, or planet Earth, and we're beamed to other people, or we connect to other people via stations of either kind. But yes, again, I'm inclined to maybe think of this as a proper name reference that I'm just not familiar with or can't recall. In any case, let's give it a listen. This is U2, Zoo Station, the first track on their 1991 album Achtung Baby. That distorted bass. And that's definitely a distinct sound and a notable sonic shift. Again, like Rattle and Hum, there were multiple tracks on that album that had a blues rock sound and, sort of took what they had done with some of their rock stylings and then pushed it in a more like bluesy, like folksy direction. Obviously, they've had tunes with a variety of stylings, but this is definitely moving in a new direction. I enjoy that deep, pulsing, distorted bass. There's some percussive elements which have like a metallic clinking type of sound, which gives it a bit more of an industrial feel. Bono's vocals, they're like filtered, where they kind of have that like speaking through a megaphone effect. So yeah, that itself sounded different. The overall rhythms were more like intense and, what's the right word? Like heavy. There was a lot of weight to the sonic arrangement and composition. And lyrically, I don't quite know what's happening, but we do hear reference to being at a station as well as to like, putting your hands up on the glass, which, in zoos there are glass, walls between observer and observed. And of course, like if you are in a station, like in a physical sense, again, like a liminal space through which people pass, it could maybe be more literal, like being in a city. He talked about like going out onto the streets. He's like ready to do that. But it could also be like, in terms of the passage of time, it could be like a metaphor for like, the phases of our lives in the modern world. But I'm also curious because there were like lines about like he's ready for the crush. He's also ready to let his hands, like to let go of the wheel, which, you are not in control of where you're going and what you might run into if that is the case. So yeah, that feels dangerous. That feels like he's willing to put himself into a vulnerable state for whatever benefit or cathartic return that he's getting. So yeah, there's like phrases that seem to make reference to a city and like physical environments, but I suspect they're probably functioning on multiple levels. As I said, we had a literal reference to being in a station, so I'm inclined to see it as a physical place or a conceptual place, but it could also relate to a station in the sense of a channel, a frequency through which you broadcast something. But yeah, definitely a heavier sound, a more like, a grittier kind of metallic sound, and especially with Bono's vocals, it really did stand out as different from a lot of what they'd done before. And not just with that filter, but also like the way he was singing. It, wasn't that like raspy, bluesy type of belting. It wasn't necessarily the floatier vocals that we've heard Bono do in some of their more, let's say, like epic tracks from the 80s. So yeah, definitely picking up on a new scheme, although of course I expect there to be continuity as well. Like again, talking about Midazoland or Ultra from Depeche Mode, it was very different from a lot of what they'd done, and yet there's still features, there's still elements where it's like, it is the Depeche Mode I know, it is the Duran Duran I've come to know, which in regard to that second group, I knew them going back to when I was a kid, but it's only in the last few years that I've taken a fuller journey through the Duran catalog. But the point is, like, there was change, there was a definite shift in sound, and yet still, certain elements had a degree of continuity. So I expect that to be the case here. But yeah, a really fantastic opener. Thank you again to both Han Solo and to Adam for sharing the YouTube material, and to Izzy for providing a lot of context for this one. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the album. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.